Welcome to Design Diary, the podcast where you get to look inside my board game design notebook as well as what's going on inside my head. We look at a new word each day from the sense of mechanics, tone, theme, or inspiration for a full game. Today's word is Nebbish, a timid, meek, or ineffectual person, which I thought was an adjective, like the Nebbish, man or whatever. But it's actually, that person is a Nebbish. Like, they are a Nebbish. The example here is Lyle may have come across as a Nebbish, but he stood up to the bully that gave him a hard time. Arthur Darvill is known to Doctor Who fans as the Nebbish turned stalwart hero, Rory Williams. Here's the third example is neat. It's from what I read, it looks like Pa isn't anything like the Nebbish Ma always makes him out to be. So it's a cool word, and because I saw it was a noun, it made me start thinking of like an actual like a race of small useless creatures. So I'm gonna get into that in a second. I'm gonna read what I wrote. I wrote, ineffectual is a tough term in gaming because it's the opposite of playing a game well. So I thought of this at first I thought of it as like a player style, or a play style, or even like a role that you're trying to, it was almost very meta that you were playing in this play style, or it restricted your actions, or, it was a character type or something along those lines. But timid and meek is fine. You're kind of behind the scenes or whatever. But ineffectual is like the killer word there. Since I thought it was an adjective, and I realized it was a noun, it made me think of a non-player character. At first I thought of a troll, but I think a troll is a little bit more negative and intentional. To me, Nebbish is it comes from, there were some of the terms were, the roots were poor and unfortunate. And that really hit the mark for me, was like naive, nervous and shy. But because of that, whatever these creatures are, this Nebbish creatures, they are less effective because they're not outgoing. They kind of sit in the background, and because of their lack of experience or whatever, they become that less effective, and they become the Nebbish. So I also wrote, speaking of that, is there anything more insulting than just saying you are not effective? That insult like hits the core of my everything. You are not effective means it's just like you're useless, and your efforts are wasted. So that hit me in an interesting spot. So here's where my mind went. There's a game of either a solo style game, or a one versus many, or something along those lines. And I went with this medieval farm setting because I think of these Nebbish being like just little creatures that are around and bothersome, and just can't do anything. Like, they can't even leave well. They're just there. They you just can't get rid of them. Which is not exactly the definition, but once a Nebbish is here, if they're timid, meek, and ineffectual, they're probably not going anywhere. So in this medieval farm setting, you're the farmer. The other players, or the AI, or whatever, are these new creatures that are coming to town. They are the Nebbish. They are plopping themselves down, in your way, and just getting in your way. So I thought of it as like something like worker placement, where you've got all of these different areas that you can go. All of them are different actions and things that you can do. Once the board fills up, you take your stuff back. And as these Nebbish start to come to town, they start to get in your way and fill these spots. And you need to use alternate means outside of the spots, working on a way to either get rid of them or use them to your advantage. So, because they prevent you from working. I don't know if they'd come out randomly or however it works, but it's just imagine a worker placement game that's solo or multiplayer or whatever, and these just blocks start coming out, and they're just essentially blocking yours. Now, that doesn't give them any brains or any actions or anything. They're just simply blocking you. They're ineffective. They can't do anything. But I wanted to think about that. So where I went to with that was a couple things you can do is, one, you can try to train them to work. So imagine it's a game where you're trying to fill these spots on the board. You're trying to use the actions, but things are taking those actions. And if you spend the time, you can make them work. It's like getting more workers to place, but they're not great. So maybe they would only produce like small numbers of what you would normally produce or things along those lines. And they could be trained. But they also, you could move them off of spaces you need and put them on worse spaces so you can get yourself to the better spaces. And it essentially gives you this sort of eventual decision tree where you decide where you're going to place your better workers and your not as great workers, your less effective workers, just to maximize the best of your time. The other thing you could do is try to lure them away, which will cost time and resources, and figuring out kind of what makes them tick and getting them simply just out of there. And, if it's multiplayer, onto an opponent, or just, into an area where that makes sense and where, So the third thing was you've got, put them to work, remove them. And the third thing was just to leave them and do other things. Focus your efforts elsewhere. So somehow just hoping that they all kind of stick in the one area and they're just not a part of what you're doing. Or you can even like spend your efforts to, instead of trying to move them away, you can try to like build a dividing line so they cannot cross into your new areas, and you can just have this small focus and protect it, and your reach isn't great. But so that I had this other idea with this, which was still going with Nebbish as I think of it as almost like a light role-playing fantasy. There's a character I always refer to, which is the Domovoi, which is this like old man creature. It's a little tiny thing that lives in your kitchen cabinets. And this isn't quite that in my mind. I just picture Nebbish just because of the word. Just these like chunky little stubby, almost like little gnomey, but I still think sort of trolly things that just kind of get in the way. But I was thinking of it as like almost like a younger style game of something my children would like, or something along those lines, where you had to play in the style of Nebbish, where you are timid, meek, and ineffectual, but more the timid or meek. It's quiet, slower, personal movements of whatever it is. But the whole idea was to like win the game with as little work as possible. So work would be considered actions or movements, or if it's a set collection game, it would be having one big set as opposed to having a whole bunch of little sets, or something just along the lines of a game where you're almost like moving from point A to point B, but you would be successful and win the game if you move as little as possible. So I thought of it as like almost the word like a stalwart or something along those lines, where you're rewarded for just not moving. And I don't know how that could be fun, but just staying still and preventing the things around you from influencing you and forcing you to actually get up and do something. That's like the couch potato of the game, but I mean, couch potato is probably pretty accurate for it. But timid and meek do set a tone that it's almost just, it's not quite laziness. It's just that you're just quieter. You're just less outgoing. So that's what today is. It's one of those days where I dance around a whole bunch of ideas and don't really settle on anything that I love, but I do love Nebbish as a race of creatures. I do really like that. So let me know if you have any ideas, if this strikes anything, if you've ever made a design that kind of hits this note. We've been seeing a lot of that where somebody says, oh, I have this game that, you know, already has something like that, which is, it's cool, and it's cool to associate them either beforehand or after. So cool. Let me know if you have anything, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. See ya.